So let's now add this input validation logic here. For this, I'll first of all create a chosen number constant where I want to convert the entered number state that I have here, which is a string, to a number. And this conversion can be performed by using the built-in parseInt function. This function is globally available in JavaScript in React Native apps, just as it is globally available in the browser. So you can just call it like this, and to parseInt, you pass the entered number. This will convert this string to a number, or at least it will try to convert it. This would fail if something is entered that is not convertible to a number, like non-digit characters. Therefore, I next want to add a if statement here, where I check if this is maybe not a number, if the conversion failed. This can be done with the built-in isNotANumber function, which is also globally available and to which I pass chosen number. This will return true if chosen number is not a number, so if the conversion failed. Now I also want to add a couple of other checks, because if this check fails, or one of the other checks which I am about to add, in that case I want to show an alert. Show alert, that's what we'll do soon. So the other checks I want to perform are separated by an or, because I want to show the alert if this is not a number, or if chosen number is a number, but it's smaller or equal than 0. So if it's 0 or smaller than that, that would also be invalid, and I want to show an alert in that case as well. Or I want to show an alert if chosen number is greater than 99. If it's too big, I also want to show an alert. Now, I also want to return thereafter to make sure that this function does not continue its execution if we make it into this if statement, so that we cancel this function's execution. But how can we now show such an alert? That would also be interesting. And here, React Native got us covered. React Native exposes an alert API. Now, this is now not a component which we display, but instead alert is an object that holds a method that we can call to show an alert. To be precise, the alert method. It also has the prompt method, which would display a dialog where we can enter a value. But here I'm interested in the alert method, which shows a dialog which we can only confirm by pressing a button. Now this alert method here wants a couple of arguments. The first one is the title, the second one will be the message, and the third one allows us to configure the buttons that will be part of that alert. And this alert method, by the way, will create a native alert dialog, as you will see in a couple of minutes. So it will use the native alert API built into the iOS and Android platforms. So here I'll say invalid number as a title, and then as a message I'll say number has to be a number between 1 and 99. And then as a last step, we can pass an array where we configure the buttons that should be shown. And you can actually add multiple buttons to the alert, but here I will only add one. And a button is defined by adding an object to this array. And in this object, every button then has a text, which is the caption of this button, in this case, OK. And it has a style. And the style can be default, destructive, or cancel. And this will basically influence which text color is used, if the text is bold, things like this. And here I will use destructive, but feel free to play around with these different styles to see how the look changes as you change the style. Last but not least, you also can add on press property, which allows you to point at a function that should be executed when that button is clicked. So when that button on this alert is clicked. And I do want to do that because I want to reset the input once this button is clicked. So that if an invalid value was provided, we show the alert. And once the alert is confirmed and handled by the user, I want to reset the input to get rid of the invalid input value. For this, we can add a new function, maybe here, the exact position doesn't matter, which is the reset input handler. And here I will set my entered number to an empty string to set this back to an empty string, which also was our initial state. And since we bind entered number to the value of text input, if we change entered number, if we change this state as we do it here, the value in the input will be changed. So therefore now we can point at reset input handler like this, and now the input will be reset whenever this dialog is confirmed. Now, last but not least, I will also connect this reset button to this newly added reset input handler function by adding the onPress prop and pointing at reset input handler here as well. This is not related to the alert, but it's also something we need to do. So now we should show an alert if the value is invalid. Otherwise, I'll just log valid number for the moment. In the future, we will of course make sure that in this case, we move on to the next game screen. But now with all these changes applied, if we save this and we maybe reload all our apps to make sure that all the changes are applied to these simulators, if I try to submit an empty input, I get this alert. And you see I have this red text here because I used a destructive style. And I get this alert, which has the default iOS alert look and feel because it is a default iOS alert. On Android, I get an alert that has the default Android dialog look. Now, if I enter -1 here, I also get such an alert. If I enter a valid number, nothing happens though. Instead, then we see valid number logged in the console. If I click reset, this is reset. And if I entered something invalid and I click OK on this dialog, it's also cleared, as you can see. So this all works as expected. Now we're fetching this user input. Now we can make sure that we then move on to a new screen. Because at the moment, we only have one screen, and that's this screen here, which is also not entirely finished, but good enough for now.